Did you know that around 70% of people believe they are not creative? It's shocking, right? Even more surprising is that research shows creativity can decline with age. A study from the University of California found that our ability to generate creative ideas peaks in our early 30s and starts to decline after that. But here's the good news. Creativity is not just a talent you're born with, it's a skill you can develop. Many people think brainstorming is the best way to spark creativity. They gather in groups, toss around ideas, and hope for a breakthrough. However, studies reveal that traditional brainstorming often leads to less original thinking. In fact, individuals working alone typically come up with more unique ideas. So, if brainstorming isn't the magic bullet for creativity, what is? In this video, we'll explore 6 powerful strategies to help you unleash your creative potential. From understanding why solitude can boost your ideas to discovering how constraints can spark innovation, each chapter will challenge common beliefs about creativity. Get ready to dive deep and find out how to become more creative than you ever thought possible. Let's break free from the myths and discover the real keys to creativity. Chapter 1. The Brainstorming Trap. Why it fails to spark creativity. Most people believe brainstorming is the go-to tool for sparking creativity. After all, gathering a bunch of minds in a room to come up with ideas sounds perfect, right? Well, not quite. Studies show that group brainstorming can actually lead to fewer and less original ideas. A 2010 study from Yale found that individuals working alone generated more unique ideas than those in group brainstorming sessions. This happens because group settings often encourage conformity, and people are less likely to share their boldest ideas for fear of judgment. When brainstorming, we also tend to focus too much on the quantity of ideas rather than the quality. The more ideas, the better, right? Not necessarily. In reality, too many ideas can cloud our judgment, making it harder to spot the true gems. And groupthink, the tendency to agree with others to maintain harmony, can water down truly unique concepts. Instead of brainstorming, try individual ideation. Give yourself space to think alone. When you're not worried about what others will say, you're more likely to explore unusual ideas and break free from conventional thinking. Chapter 2. Creative Defiance. Break free from linear thinking. Linear thinking is the idea that there's a step-by-step process to creativity. Follow the rules, and you'll get there. But creativity doesn't work like that. In fact, defying structure is often what leads to the most creative breakthroughs. Einstein once said, "Imagination is more important than knowledge." He understood that rigid thinking limits possibilities. One way to break out of linear thinking is to practice divergent thinking. This is when you start with a problem and generate multiple solutions that aren't necessarily connected. Unlike traditional brainstorming, divergent thinking doesn't follow a clear path. It allows you to jump between seemingly unrelated ideas. The goal is to explore different directions without worrying about being right. Research from the University of Toronto found that highly creative people are better at divergent thinking because they can shut off the brain's filter that blocks irrelevant information. Letting your mind wander freely might feel uncomfortable at first, but it can lead to surprising insights. You could try a technique called mind mapping, where you start with a central idea and branch out to explore related thoughts. It's less about logic and more about exploring all the possible directions your brain wants to go. Chapter 3. The Power of Solitude. Why daydreaming beats brainstorming. If you've ever had a brilliant idea while in the shower, you're not alone. Some of our best ideas come when we're not actively thinking about the problem. That's because daydreaming allows your brain to enter what scientists call the default mode network, the part of your brain that's active when you're relaxed. A study published in Psychological Science found that people are more creative when their minds are wandering, compared to when they're actively focused on solving a problem. This is why solitude and downtime are critical to creativity. When we step away from distractions and allow ourselves to be alone with our thoughts, new connections form in the brain. In contrast, group brainstorming often forces people to come up with ideas on the spot, which can feel stressful and lead to less innovative thinking. Incorporating intentional solitude into your daily routine could be as simple as taking a walk without your phone, meditating, or just sitting quietly for a few minutes each day. Albert Einstein was known to take long walks to help his brain process complex ideas. I think 99 times and find nothing. I stop thinking, swim in silence, and the truth comes to me, he once said. Daydreaming is not a waste of time, it's where real creativity happens. If you're enjoying these insights, don't forget to subscribe for more tips on unleashing your creativity. Chapter 4. Sensory Overload. Feeding your creativity from the world around you. Our brains are like sponges, constantly absorbing information from the environment. But here's the catch. We often overlook how much the world around us can fuel creativity. The more varied your experiences, the more material your brain has to connect and draw from. That's why exposing yourself to new sights, sounds, and even smells can boost your creative thinking. A study by the University of Amsterdam found that people who were exposed to a wide variety of sensory inputs came up with more creative solutions. It's because novel stimuli create new neural pathways in the brain, helping you think in fresh ways. So if you're feeling stuck, change your environment. Something as simple as walking through a park, visiting a new cafe, or listening to a different genre of music can trigger new ideas. The famous writer Maya Angelou said, "You can't use up creativity. The more you use, the more you have." Part of that process is actively seeking inspiration from the world around you. Try immersing yourself in art, culture, or nature. Even something as small as rearranging your workspace can give your mind a fresh perspective. Ever notice how new surroundings seem to spark more ideas? That's not a coincidence, it's how our brains are wired. If you want to take it a step further, explore unfamiliar experiences. Visit a museum, try a new hobby, or cook a dish from a different culture. These experiences stimulate your brain and force it to make new connections. Think of it as cross-training for creativity. The more variety you introduce into your life, the more your brain has to play with. Chapter 5. Creative Juicing. Why constraints are your best friend. This might sound counterintuitive, but placing limits on yourself can actually boost creativity. You'd think having complete freedom is the way to go, right? But studies show that working within constraints forces you to be more inventive. A 2017 study in the Journal of Consumer Research found that people came up with more creative solutions when they had fewer options to work with. Constraints challenge your brain to work harder, and that's where the magic happens. Consider how filmmakers often make their best work with limited budgets. When you don't have all the resources in the world, you're forced to think outside the box. As the famous director Orson Welles said, "The enemy of art is the absence of limitations." This strategy works in everyday life, too. Let's say you're working on a project but have limited time or materials. Instead of seeing this as a setback, embrace it. Ask yourself, what can I do with what I have? Often, the best ideas come when you're forced to be resourceful. Constraints breed creativity because they push your brain to find solutions that aren't immediately obvious. If you want to practice this, give yourself creative challenges. For example, set a time limit for generating ideas or restrict yourself to only using a certain set of tools. By narrowing your focus, you'll find new and innovative ways to solve problems. The key is to view constraints not as obstacles but as opportunities. If you found these tips helpful, make sure to subscribe and join us for more insights on nurturing your creative journey.